Welcome back to another episode of the Untitled Football Podcast. Today we're going to talk about week number 4, reaction review recap on the podcast that has a lot of analytics, advanced ones. I don't think I prefaced that enough in the intro, but that's what this podcast is. So, Broncos versus Jets in that Thursday night thriller. The game everybody wanted to see, the game of the week, bro. I literally almost forgot about this game. I almost forgot about this game happening. I almost went straight into the 1 o'clock sleep. They really have to step up those primetime Thursday games. The Broncos ended up winning with Brett Rippon. This might be the end of the Rippon era. It looked good for like 2.5 quarters, but it fell off the rails hard. He made that throw to Tim Patrick over the shoulder to, I forgot who it was. For some reason, I think I think it was Tim Patrick. He made that over the shoulder to Tim Patrick, had a great touchdown throw, threw a plethora of awful interceptions, like some of the worst you'll see all year. The one to Pierre Desir when he just tossed it to him and he sidelined it. The other one to Pierre Desir where he went for 6. His picks were awful. Sam Darnold, he was okay at the Jets are just a bad team all around. They got Jamison Crowder back. He got 10 targets. That could be a sneaky fantasy play for I don't know. It could be a sneaky fantasy play. He's going to get a ton of targets. He's like 5th in fantasy points per game at the receiver position. He has been one of the best fantasy receivers so far this season when he's played. Darnold was okay. He was whatever, actually, but got hurt a shoulder, had that amazing run play, led the team in rushing yards as they lost and fell to Brett Rippon, who played bad. So the Jets suck. They just lost to Brett Rippon, who played awfully. They are drawing up wheel routes to Frank Gore and kicking field goals on these 4th and short situations, which kind of took them out of the game. But, yeah. I'm done talking about this game. I shouldn't have even spent this much time on a game that was so, bad and meaningless. It was a weird game. It was just an ugly one, too. Some terrible picks, just forget it. Next game, Carolina Panthers versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals came in this game, favored it, only by 3 points, I think. Well, and William held it at 3, but I think they were at 4 earlier in the week. The Cardinals, I always thought they were overrated, but because they just didn't pass the ball well. They don't have a really weird offense. Kyler Murray was 24-31 with a 4.3 yards per attempt, which is really, really low. And their offense, passing wise, is basically the Saints' offense, but somehow Kyler Murray is getting these MVP chants, and those probably came to a halt last week, and probably came to a really hard stop this week. But he was getting some MVP mentions, and he was running the ball. He's still running the ball well. They're just not throwing it. He just isn't throwing it that well. So they win. So they're losing. They lost 2 games in a row. Teddy wasn't even that good either. He had an interception dropped in the end zone. Threw another one right to Patrick Peterson. Teddy Bridgewater wasn't even good this week. He ran in a score. Mike Davis is great. That's why you pay that. That's why you make Mike Davis the highest paid running back right there. Oh, they didn't? Never mind. So, the Panthers, I thought they were underrated, and I thought the Cardinals were overrated. But I didn't really expect the Panthers to win. Thought they would make it closer than people expected. The Cardinals are in some trouble, potentially. They're not... they're 2-2 now in a tough division. They're possibly the worst team in the division. Though the Rams just played a a really tight game against the Giants, which probably shouldn't happen if you're the Rams. But the Cardinals are probably the worst team in the division, and they'll probably be better than whatever team wins the NFC East. So, yeah, the Cardinals, I think they're 1 year away. Like, I think people might have been, including like me a little bit, were probably 1 year early on Arizona. But they had like a relatively easy schedule this year, so I actually can understand where the hype came from a record standpoint, how they could make the playoffs with that extra playoff spot. Like, I understand that, because even I thought they could be a fringe playoff team and make that playoff spot potentially, because they played an easy schedule, so they don't even have to be that good to even make it. Now, they haven't really been good, so I don't know what to really make it. Well, I do know what to make of that. They probably won't make the They probably won't make the playoffs anymore. So Arizona just lost to the Lions and the Panthers, who a lot of people think suck. So I wonder what. So that makes me think, what are they going to come into in their next game? They play the Jets next week, though. So they're probably going to be heavy favorites, because every team that plays the Jets are. Except for the Broncos are ripping, but they're opening this game at... Oh, shit, that's the wrong game. They're opening this game as 8.5 point favorites versus the Jets, which is like the lowest. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. Well, that's the look ahead, because I haven't checked back at it yet. I'll check it at the preview podcast when it's a bit closer to the week. So, yeah. The Cardinals are... Oh, Cardinals suck. Next game, Jaguars versus the Broncos. Bengals closed at about 2.5 point favorites. Ended up covering that as a win, 33-25 over the Jaguars. This game was like, I don't know if it was ever... I don't know, because this game started off like the Bengals started this game off down, though they probably should have been winning. Like, they had a touchdown that turned into a... They had a touchdown that was negated due to a holding call, which turned into a field goal. They had a touchdown that then turned into an interception by Drew Sample, getting the ball ripped out of his hands by Myles Jack. Like, this game was never really... Like, the Bengals kind of controlled... Like, it was just unlucky things that weren't... I mean, getting the ball ripped out of your hands like you're a small child is really in your control, and holding is in your control too, but... to no fault of what the playmakers like Joe Burrow, well, Drew Sample did kind of fuck up, but whatever. But to the... Joe Burrow was pretty good, basically. It's basically what I'm trying to say in an odd way. Like, this game, like, the score is not evident of what this game was, because they had 2 touchdowns taken off of the board, the Bengals did. I mean, Gardner Minshew was okay. He was solid. James Robinson had some beautiful 4-yard runs, some 8-yard runs. He was pretty good. But Gardner Minshew's... Joe Burrow was good. Joe Mixon finally had his revival of a game. Busted off a couple long runs. He was pretty good. Tyler Boyd, he was great. AJ Green, 5 targets, 1 catch. Tyler Boyd, 8 for 7. I mean, 8 targets, 7 receptions. T. Higgins, 7 targets, 4 receptions. AJ Green has really slid down the totem pole in terms of targets, which he was always before this game. Like, okay, he'll get some targets. We'll see if he catches it on this week. A ton of air yards, ton of targets. We'll see if he catches it on this week. I'm talking from a fantasy standpoint right now. That might no longer be the case. But this Bengals team that I was pretty high on coming into the season. I mean, the O-line is still bad, but against the Jaguars, who have a pretty bad front, like, you could expect the Jaguars to have a better game because the offensive line is bad, which, I mean, Joe Burrow wasn't under pressure nearly as often as he was in previous weeks. So, I mean, that's a step up, but there are no people on that team that are going to put pressure on Joe Burrow, except for like Josh Allen maybe, but Joe Burrow this week was under pressure 33% of his dropbacks, which is actually pretty low and much closer to what he was in college. Like, because Joe Burrow didn't even have that great of a college O-line. Like, he was under pressure 30% of his dropbacks in college, which in the NFL isn't necessarily a high mark, but relative to other college quarterbacks, he was under pressure a ton. Like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. Those guys are only under pressure like under 20%, like not under 20, but like 20% of their dropbacks. Like he never had a great offensive line. So yeah. Joe Burrow is a superstar. I mean, I didn't think this game was even like some of the throws he made weren't even like, he kind of got bailed out by the supporting cast a little bit. Kind of. I don't think it was his best game. But he is a stud in the making. So, yeah, Joe Burrow and his Bengals get their first win. And they're looking to get more as Joe Burrow's here in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has a franchise quarterback for the first time in about 20 years. Andy Dalton wasn't that guy. Andy Dalton definitely wasn't that guy. Joe Burrow is way better than Andy Dalton. So, let's go to Cleveland versus Dallas, the next game. Cleveland ends up beating Dallas. I thought this was probable. Dallas has an awful defense. They came into the game 3.5 point dogs. Ended up winning on the road against Dallas. Dallas, I think their defense is dreadful, but I do think they're I think they'll be better against worse teams. Because, like, to be fair to their defense, they have played the Falcons, who have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage, who's become something at least, though it might not be that good. They played Russell Wilson, who is Russell Wilson, and they played the Rams. They only gave up 20 points against the Rams. They only scored 17, too. So, the defense, I think, is a bit better than it showed so far because they have played some pretty good offenses to start off the season. Now, this game, they were getting blown the hell out. And then the Browns took their foot all the way off the gas. They ran the hell out of the ball and almost lost the game due to that. Like, they almost ran themselves out of the game. They had 20 yards of total offense in the fourth quarter up until that Odell Beckham play. And the Cowboys just slowly crept their way back into the game. So, like, they let their foot way off the gas. And it almost cost them the game. Them running the ball senselessly in the fourth quarter almost cost them the game. They passed the ball like once in the fourth quarter. Nick Chubb went down. Kareem Hunt came in. I wonder who was going to emerge from that backfield from a fantasy standpoint. I don't know if it's going to be Hunt. Like, Dearness Johnson had a good game. Though, what we're going to talk about from a regular football standpoint, when your O-line is pushing the other team around, you're going to have a good running game regardless of who's back there, whether it's Chubb or Hunt. And it's like people say, Nick Chubb is gone. That's such a severe loss. Like, I mean, it's probably a lesser loss than you think it is, especially when you have a good offensive line, which the Browns have kind of had this season. Their offensive line has performed really well. They performed like a pretty good offensive line this year, running and pass blocking. So they are, like, when your offensive line is good, it doesn't necessarily matter who's back there. They're going to probably produce. Like, he might not be as good as Chubb, but he's going to produce moderately well. And it's like people almost forgot how good Kareem Hunt was. Like, just because Kareem Hunt decided to go out and try his true passion of being a kicker, it doesn't mean he's still not a damn good running back. So, people must have forgotten how good Kareem Hunt was. So I wonder who's going to emerge from this backfield, because Dearness Johnson also had way more carries than you would expect Dearness Johnson to have. I mean, they're really running this heavy committee right now. Um, Dearness Johnson had led the team in carries with 13. Dontrell Hilliard had 5. Maybe that's because Kareem Hunt was kind of questionable coming into this game with a growing injury. Maybe he'll take over the reins of a bigger role if Chubb doesn't come back, and maybe Chubb is going to split carries and play a lesser role if he does come back. So I really want to see how this progresses long term because Kareem Hunt did come into this game injured, and he ended up second in carries on the team to Dearness Johnson. So I wonder if Dearness Johnson's going to be the Kareem Hunt to what Kareem Hunt's going to be Nick Chubb in terms of a volume, like from a role standpoint. Not a role standpoint, because you still kind of want Kareem Hunt there in passing downs because he is good at that. But I do want to see who takes the reins as the heavy carry guy. It should be Kareem Hunt, but maybe they're still committed to the committee regardless of whether Chubb is there or not. But yeah, Odell Beckham was really good. One-on-one versus Daryl Worley. Cooked him for a TD. I started him in fantasy. Dallas' defense is bad. Why not start him? So, made an amazing run to win the game. Turned like a negative 20-yard play to like a 50-yard touchdown to win the game. And they ended up adding 2 after that as well because of whatever the hell happened on the PAT. Baker Mayfield was okay this game. It's not like he was... And Dak Prescott wasn't even that good He threw 500 yards to go to... Booger McFarland said Dak Prescott threw for 5 touchdowns. That's why threw 500 yards. That's why stats are for losers. I mean, that's tough. That's crazy because... I mean, people that actually utilize stats properly don't ever really use passing yards as a proxy for playing well. But it is what it is, though. Dak Prescott, 500 yards, 68 fantasy points in my 6-point touchdown league. Well, it's stat adjusted. He had 45 regular points, but whatever. So, he had like 3 interceptions dropped, maybe more. He wasn't that good today. He wasn't really that good today. So, yeah, he really wasn't even that good today. And they ended up losing the game. I mean, Zeke fumbled. He's fumbled like multiple times every game. He's been like bad this year. Like awful. Like, this is the worst the offensive line has ever been, and it looks like Zeke is suffering hard. So I guess that's why you pay your running backs $90 million. Like, this is the worst the offensive line has been, and Zeke has struggled. 3.9 per carry, which is the lowest of his career right now. 2.77 yards per carry, which is also a career low. So the offensive line dwindles and somehow career low season. Seems like, or career low season pace. When the offensive line comes back, like Tyron Smith, Leo Collins isn't coming back. He's done for the year, but I mean, it seems like when the O-line dwindles, the running back dwindles. Interesting. Almost as if the running back is dependent on the offensive line in front of him. But yeah. Let's go on to the next game. Lions versus Saints. Saints closed this game as 3-point favorites. They opened at they opened at 4.5, got all the way down to 3. I mean, the Lions. Let's talk about the Lions first. I will get into the Saints a bit later. Let's talk about the Lions first. The Falcons are getting a ton of media scrutiny, almost as if people are just sweeping under the rug the fact that the Lions have blown a double-digit lead in every game. They've blown a double-digit lead in every game they've played this season. Now, New Orleans hasn't been good up until this point. New Orleans, Drew Brees probably had his best game of the season. That looked closer to the Drew Brees we've had for the last couple of years than what we had for the last couple of weeks. Now, based on what we have this season, that's a pretty big outlier, but Drew Brees was great today. He was actually throwing those passes outside of the numbers. He was actually going down the field more often. So, I mean, Drew Brees, like, he threw multiple passes down the field this game. He was actually way more aggressive than he has been all season. He went down the field 4 times in this one game compared to the 2 he did on the whole season. And he was throwing into the intermediate range of the field, outside of the numbers. It was definitely a much better Drew Brees game. If he can play like that, then that Saints team is contenders, because they didn't even have Michael Thomas today. So, like, if Drew Brees can play like that, then they're looking pretty good on the season now. Like, their season outlook looks way better now. Hit Manuel Sanders on that one out to the on that deep out to the in the end zone for a touchdown. Like, the Saints have been much better than. I mean, the Saints this game was much better than they were the rest of the season. I mean, the Lions, I don't know what's wrong with the Lions. Like, I don't know if they're getting enough credit for being for blowing a lead in every game. It's like people are just sweeping that under the rug because the Falcons have done it too. But the Lions have sneakily done it in every game. I mean, except for the game against the Cardinals, actually. Now that I think about it, they did win that one. But they've blown a lead in almost every game. So, yeah, I don't know what's up with the Lions. But the Saints look like they're back. Well, I don't know if they left, but they look like they are in contention again, opposed from Drew Brees playing like not a good quarterback, and Alvin Kamara turning into, I don't have an analogy, but let's go to the next game. Houston Texans versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Texans closed as 3.5-point favorites against the Vikings, ended up losing the game. Now, I had high hopes for the Texans relative to the fact that they had an easy schedule. And I thought it did get easier. The Vikings aren't that good. But yet they lost the game. So, they play the Jags next week. They probably win that game. What is the look-ahead line for that game? I do want to see. I do want to see what they think about the Texans now. They're still 7-point favorites against the Jaguars. So, yeah, the offense still just looks desynced. There's some clean pockets. O-linemen getting burned. People not getting open. People getting open. People not getting targeted. The offense still isn't good. Even still, they almost managed to win the game. And if it wasn't for Will Fuller double catch, they would have won the game. But like early in this game, there was a muffed punt that put them in a hole early, and then our offense was pretty bad in the early goings of this game. So then they ended up getting put in a disadvantageous situation, like from the jump, basically. So they were trying to dig themselves out of a hole the whole game, and that didn't help the cause of their offense not being that good. Well, I mean, it does from like a probably like all more efficient plays when you're losing, but whatever. So, yeah, they're still not going down the field that often. 4 attempts. That's not terrible. But you could also do much better when you have all that speed on your receiver core. In that receiver core. So, yeah, Deshaun Watson, though, this was probably the least he's been under pressure. Only under pressure on just 30% of his dropbacks this past week, which is probably the best he's had since like the season started. And there was this times where he was holding on to the ball forever, and he was sitting in a clean pocket for like an age. The offense still isn't great. The Vikings, on the other hand, the emergence of Justin Jefferson really helps them. Damn. The emergence of Justin Jefferson really helps him become a competent team. Like, before, they were just, like, one receiver because they had, like, Olabisi Johnson playing on the field with Adam Thielen. Now they have an actual competent wide receiver, too, in Justin Jefferson, which makes them a better team. So, like, they probably won't bottom out now. And to be honest, they probably never were going to bottom out because I think Kirk is a bit too good to just straight bottom out. But when the supporting cast is bad, which it looked like it was for like the first couple weeks of the season, then he's probably going to be bad. He goes as far as the supporting cast is going to take him. So, yeah, Kirk and the Vikings end up winning this game. And they're coming off of 2 games. They look like a competent football team. Next week, they're going up against Seattle. They come in this game as 9.5-point underdogs. Yeah. That's fun. That's interesting. Bro, what the hell is going on? That's interesting. I'll talk about that a bit more on the preview podcast because that's when I preview the game. But let's get on to the next game with the Seattle Seahawks. Speaking of Seattle, here's Seattle. Seattle Seahawks versus the Miami Dolphins. Seattle came into this game 5.5-point favorites, which seemed low. And they ended up covering that, winning 31-23 against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. I mean, this game, the score is close. I don't think this game was ever really close. Russell Wilson had another great game. I mean, he had an interception. It wasn't, like, on the scale of how bad an interception is, it wasn't, like, that bad. I think it was Xavier Howard who kind of, like, leaped through the receiver. It's a good play by Howard. Made some amazing throws. Seattle looks great right now. Their defense looked much better against a much worse Dolphins offense. So, yeah, but I don't know. Because, like, when you play up against those top teams in the NFC, which is they're trying to go to the Super Bowl. Like, they're not trying to be lumped in with the Dolphins. So, I mean, Russell Wilson was great. And they got aggressive at the end of the second half. I almost said fourth quarter. At the end of the second half, they got really aggressive and made a play to score, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. Russell Wilson made that great throw to DJ Moore on the move, which ended up leading to a touchdown. That's the type of things that, like, set you over the edge from a coaching standpoint. Things that Pete Carroll wasn't doing last season. And now he's being aggressive on fourth downs, being aggressive at the end of the second half. Like, he could have easily ran the ball, took a knee, and went to the half. Instead, they ended up getting a touchdown on that possession. Which, like, plays like that are the difference between great coaches and not so great coaches. And these are things that Pete Carroll wasn't doing prior to the season. And this really, Seattle, with the way Russell Wilson's playing, some of the aggressiveness they're showing, them passing the ball early and often, like, this is a winning formula. Like, they have the talent. They always had the talent. The talent on the roster was never an issue. And now this is probably the best season the Seahawks have had in years. So, yeah, I don't know why this game was really 5 points. Like, it feels like this spread should have been wider. I mean, the Dolphins are a tough team to beat, knowing the volatility of Ryan Fitzpatrick. But even still, 5.5 points versus one of the best teams in the NFL doesn't seem right. I mean, then again, they only lost by 8, so... But, I mean, if you put it at, like, 7, then it still would have covered, so... Yeah. Miami, I mean, they were fine. They were okay. There's not much to say about Miami. I mean, Fitzpatrick was fell down from grace, fell down from the sky and landed hard on the concrete after his game against Jacksonville. Miami. They're probably a tough team to play, knowing how good Fitzpatrick can be week to week. But a team like the Seahawks shouldn't be too worried about them. But they just dropped 23 points. In the grand scheme of things in the NFL today, that's not that much. But yeah, because whatever. On to the next game. Surprising? I don't know. Kind of surprising. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Chargers. Chargers came into this game 7-point dogs to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That ended up not covering as it was just 7 on the dot. This game was kind of not weird, but Justin Herbert played phenomenally compared to what I expected him. He's been better than I expected him to be. Though the first couple of games weren't even that good, but whatever. He was great today. Tampa Bay did what I expected him to do, which was blitz a lot. He got blitzed a lot, and the only caveat was he made a ton of throws and a ton of plays under pressure. Bombs, chunk plays. He was great. He threw a pick that ended up losing them the game, but other than that, he was fantastic. This is the best game of his career, as they end up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because Tom Brady, who has sneakily been playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if he didn't have 4 touchdowns dropped, he'd have Russell Wilson numbers right now. He'd probably be in the top of the MVP discussion. But that's not how the ball broke on those plays. He had 3 touchdowns dropped against the Panthers, which would have added 3 more touchdowns to his touchdown total, which is already 11. He's second in the league in touchdowns right now. The box score output is much worse than the way Tom Brady is playing. Tom Brady is playing phenomenally right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the receivers are still in and out of the lineup and keep getting injured. Which isn't the most ideal thing in the world. Mike Evans did something to his leg early in the game, and Chris Godwin was already out. You have Scotty Miller, Gronk finally... Well, I wouldn't say he finally woke up. He had 1 catch. He had another one where Brady put that thing right on his hand, and then he dropped it. To be fair, he only had 1 hand on it, but yeah, that was a great throw. What else did Tom Brady do? We had the one to Mike Evans, the first one to Mike Evans, where he dropped it in a bucket, but Mike Evans hit the ground and dropped it. Then he had the second one to Mike Evans, which was less of a dime. To be fair, he threw it to his leverage behind him, and they gave Mike Evans an opportunity to get it without the cornerback getting it, but then he had to jump all the Gronk, which was basically all Gronk. That's old school Gronk right there. This Bucs team isn't, I don't know, because I don't know what to say about the team, because their defense, which was said to be great, to be fair, they did play against some bad teams, but they were pretty good at the back end of last year as well, so it's not like it was a random great defensive output. And when the quarterback is going to make a ton of plays under pressure, there's not too much you can do about that. Justin Herbert played great. So the defense looked a bit worse than it probably was. I still think this Bucs team is a contender. Mainly due to the fact that Tom Brady's playing so well right now, and the offense is really good. So the defense really just doesn't have. So the defense doesn't really have to be that good if they're going to score 38 points. And even still, at the rate they get pressure at, they're it's going to cause mistakes. Every quarterback is not going to be as good as Justin Herbert was under pressure today. So I think this Bucs team is fine long term. There's still at times where the offense looks kind of weird and jumbly. Whatever. Yeah. On to the next game, though. The last game of the 1 o'clock slate. Baltimore Ravens versus Washington football team. This game went differently than I expected it to go for Washington on offense. They were much better than I thought they were going to be. And that says a lot, saying that they only scored 17 points and 10 in meaningful minutes before RG3 threw an interception. before RG3 connected with his former teammate. No, he didn't. It was Kendall Fuller, but they didn't play at the same time. Kendall Fuller wasn't even in the league. He might not have even been in college. I know he might. I know he might not have even been in college. But anyway, I mean, Baltimore dealt this team relatively easily. I mean, Lamar was good. He had a nice 50-yard run. I mean, he was pretty good throwing the ball too as well. He had a nice throw to Mark Andrews on the move for a touchdown. Another one to Marquise Brown on the move that set up a Mark Ingram touchdown. Lamar threw the ball pretty well, and I didn't expect any less. Washington has a pretty bad secondary, so why wouldn't he carve him up? I mean, he only threw the ball 21 times, and they still just beat him down. Washington's offense was better than I thought it was going to be, but it wasn't good. I mean, because I expected Dwayne Haskins to just be, like, awful. I expected him to be under pressure, blitzed a ton. I expected, like, a bloodbath, like 42-7 or something like that, like 42-3. I mean, it was kind of like that, but whatever. Dwayne Haskins was under pressure, only 20% of his dropbacks, which is way less than I thought it would be. So, like, the Ravens didn't even blitz him that much. He was only under pressure 20% of his dropbacks. Only 20% of his, like, that was 25th on the week. Like, he was kept clean for the most part of that game. And still wasn't that good. If I'm Washington, I'm looking to move on from Dwayne Haskins. And then he checked it down on 4th down at the goal line. Like, it was bad. It was bad. I mean, the Ravens got back on track like I think the entire world expected. And it wasn't the bludgeoning that people might have expected, as if you got it when it was at +4, when the Ravens were at -14, they didn't even cover that. But if you got it at 13.5, they did. So, or like 13, because it got down to that on some places. But on William Hill Sportsbook, it closed at 14. So, yeah. Baltimore moves on another game after beating Washington. On to the 4 o'clock slate. New York Giants versus Los Angeles Rams. The Rams didn't cover the spread of 13 points. They were favored 13 points coming into this game. You know, I said maybe put a little bit of money on the Giants plus 13. That ended up coming to fruition. Not in the way that I thought it would. The Rams struggled to score points, which I didn't think would happen. And, I mean, the Giants struggled to score points too, but, yeah. Both teams struggled to score points. This is a dirty, pretty bad game. Jared Goff, low A dot. I mean, that's what he is. He's being protected so heavily by the scheme. They ran the ball 23 or like 28 times for 2.5 yards per carry. I mean, that didn't work out. They didn't score the ball. They didn't move the ball downfield. And, yeah, they ran a much less play-action heavy attack this week. They only did 44% of their dropbacks, but this game was just bad. It felt like Daniel Jones was under pressure like 1,000 times. This game, he was under pressure 37.8% of his dropbacks. I mean, this game is just bad. It was bad. There was not too many points being scored from either side, which is probably alarming for the Rams, not really for the Giants. I mean, the Giants suck anyway, so yeah. The Rams, on the other hand, this was a game where you probably should have beat down the Giants, but that didn't end up happening. So I don't know. Who do they play next week? I'm gonna see what the line for their game next week is. I mean, they play Washington. There's 9.5-point favorites going into this game. What is it? I mean, that seems about right. I mean, yeah. I mean, the Rams. I didn't think they were good coming into the season. They've been better than I expected them to be coming into the year. I mean, yeah, but kinda. I mean, I don't know, because only scoring 17 points on a pretty bad Giants defense is like not encouraging. So yeah, but let's go into the next game. Again, with the another game in the 4 o'clock slate with the Buffalo Bills versus Las Vegas Raiders. The Bills only came into this game favored by 3 points, which always seemed kind of weird to me. The Bills are way better than the Raiders. Maybe the Raiders are overvalued due to beating the Saints, but the Raiders are a good team, and I mean the Bills won. Josh Allen was throwing lasers all over the field. He was great. He had like an adjusted completion percentage of like 93. Yeah, 93. The adjusted completion percentage from Josh Allen. He was really good today. And, I mean, he was great. He threw that great throw to John Brown. Underthrew a play to Stephon Diggs. That was probably a touchdown, but whatever. Other than that throw, he was great. Took a bad sack, but other than those two plays, he was great. Josh Allen has really come into his own as a quarterback recently after coming from a really low baseline. Like I said in another video, I forgot which one it was, but like this is such a deviation from his baseline that it makes you think a little. Because, like, he was bad at Wyoming. He was bad up until this point in his NFL career. It's like, where did this come from? And is it linked to Stephon Diggs being there, elevating his baseline? I don't know. Because, I mean, they are creating throws at, like, the open throws at, like, the highest rate in the NFL. Dabble. The receivers being great. Like they're helping Josh Allen out a lot, and he's making the throws, and he's making like these high end throws into some tight windows. That John Brown throw was spectacular. Yeah, he's playing great right now, but you have to wonder like this is such a deviation from the rest of his career that it's kind of odd. Like it just doesn't seem right. Yeah, but he was amazing this game. Josh Allen playing great against the Raiders. The Raiders, on the other hand, they left some stuff on the table from like a fourth down standpoint, and they ended up losing the game. So, yeah, the Raiders suck. The Bills, they keep moving on. They're undefeated. That's sort of an undefeated start for the second year in a row. We'll see how long this one lasts. The last one was a bit fraudulent, but whatever. We'll see how long this one lasts. We'll see how good they are this week. They do play next week the Titans, if the Titans are even able to play, which is a pretty tough game potentially. Like the Titans, I still don't really know what to think about the Titans. I don't know what to think about most of the teams in the NFC and the AFC South. And then next week the week after that, they play the Chiefs. Like, their schedule does get more difficult from this point. So we'll see how that affects the Bills and how good they are when they get to play teams like the Chiefs, 49ers, the Seahawks. I mean, even the Cardinals, I guess, but I think the Bills are better than the Cardinals. So, like the Patriots, like we'll see how they fare against those sort of teams. So, yeah. Let's get on to the next game, though. Colts versus Bears. The Colts. The Colts were they win this game. They came into this game as 3-point favorites, and they win this game 19-11. I still don't know what to think about the Colts, but I think I have a more clear picture of the Colts now. Kinda. I don't know. But here's the thing. They have like the best defense in terms of EPA per play allowed. So, but they have also, but when you add the context of them playing against Sam Darnold and his Jets, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, before Justin Jefferson was really put in the starting lineup, and before he was given a significant role, and they played the Jaguars, who they lost to. Then they play Nick Foles and the Bears, who the Bears have weapons, but Nick Foles isn't a very good quarterback. Like, their defense is really good, but they haven't played a good offense yet. Next week, they play the Browns, and I think they're favorite coming into this game. They're 2.5-point favorites, I think, or look ahead, 2.5-point favorites. I think now they've got down to 1.5. I don't think, like, the Colts offense isn't that good. The Colts defense, I think, is a bit overrated. Like, are the Colts just an overrated team? I don't know. And that's what I'm trying to say. I do want to see them play a better team and see how their defense fares then. And the Browns could be that team, potentially. I mean, they're definitely better than the Jags and the Jets and probably the Bears, because Baker Mayfield's better than Nick Foles. So, yeah, this Colts team, I think, is slightly overrated, though. I'm not sure. I still really don't know what to think about the Colts. The Bears, on the other hand, Allen Robinson is great. I almost said Aaron Rodgers. Free Allen Robinson from the Bears. He is so good, so underrated, and yet has never played with a quarterback that's even like top 20. Blake Bortles, like, Christian Hackenberg, Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. He's probably not played with a quarterback that's even top 20, a top 20 quarterback. So this isn't even like free Allen Robinson. He made a great play at the end of the game when it was already over. Nick Foles was horrible today. He missed a ton of throws. He even missed a ton of throws last week, overthrowing a ton of passes. He was bad today. I don't think the Bears are good. They were a fraudulent 3-0 team to begin with, and like, they're just not that good. So the Colts go on ahead and go over the Bears because the Bears suck. And I still don't know the thing about the Colts. Like, Rivers wasn't even that good this past game. Their offense really hasn't been that great all season. I mean, it's been fine, like, relative to the fact that they've played 3 of the worst defenses in the NFL, but I don't think their offense is that good. So, yeah, that's the Colts for you. Let's go on to the next game, though. Philadelphia versus San Francisco. Game where Nick Mullins got benched for C.J. Beathard. This game is ugly. This game wasn't good. And it was on primetime. You know, it seemed good. This game seemed good in theory. Like, oh, Carson Wentz and his Eagles versus Jimmy G, the Super Bowl runner-ups. 49ers. It didn't quite go like that. As Nick Mullins was playing, then Nick Mullins gets benched. Carson Wentz was playing. Carson Wentz was playing poorly. He made a really good throw at the end of the game. Who was it? I don't even remember who it was. But he threw a nice pass down the sideline over the shoulder. That was a really good throw by Wentz. But I mean, like, overall, he wasn't good today. Still missed throws. They had a brain dead play call when they just, like, rolled Wentz out to take a sack, and then they just gave the ball back to the 49ers, and they almost won the game. That was pretty odd. So, I mean, the Eagles are first in the NFC East. They have the tie, so this win put them in full control of the NFC East. Now, I don't think they're the best team in the NFC East. I think that's Dallas. Because, like, Dallas, I think Dallas is probably going to get better during the course of the season, kind of. Because, like, they're going to play up against, like, they have a 4-game stretch up against, like, the Redskins or Washington, the Giants, the Eagles, and, like, the Cardinals. Those are all 4 games they could win. It's like the Redskins or Washington has a bad offense. The Giants are, meh. Like, their defense will probably look better in those 4 games coming up because they're playing up against much worse offenses. So, yeah, they're going to, I think the Cowboys are probably going to win the division. Like, I think the Eagles are not, like, I mean, if Wentz plays like he has the whole season, then the Eagles are not a good team. The 49ers, on the other hand, though, starting Nick Mullins, that's never really a good thing. Never a good thing. And he ended up playing bad. He was in an opportunity where he could have earned himself some money. Instead, he played like an absolute disaster. Threw some terrible picks, missed the throw to Kyle Juszczyk that would have put the game on ice early. But and speaking of early decisions, they went for 2 after their first touchdown, which, I mean, at halftime looked like it was the most shrewd move ever because it was only 8-7. At one point would have been the difference between them winning and losing the game. Ended up not being that. 49ers kind of fought their way back from a 1-point deficit, but they ended up taking the lead. The Eagles made a nice, well, I don't think they took the lead, but the Eagles ended up winning the game. It was not a good game. It was more both teams played bad and one team had to win. And the Eagles ended up winning. Never put these 2 teams on primetime ever again. Flex them out. The Eagles are bad. The 49ers, who are banged up, are bad. I mean, they got back George Kittle, who played a monster game. And they also got back Deebo Samuel, who played a less monster game, but was still solid. So, Brandon Ayuk made a great play. Diving, jumping over people to go to the end zone. Like, Brandon Ayuk, I wasn't really too high on him coming into the season. But, I mean, coming into the draft. But once he got drafted by Kyle Shanahan, I knew he'd be better than whatever expectations I had for him because he landed in a great spot. And it's not like he's still like it's not like he's a super productive player right now, but yeah. 49ers, I mean, if they keep being, well, I don't know, because I don't think the Cardinals are that good, so I think they're probably fine, and they still probably have ground in their division. I think it is the Seahawks division now, like full on the Seahawks division. But yeah, I wondered, like, I wondered how many times Kyle Shanahan, like, coming into this game, the Eagles, somehow the line moved all the way out to 8.5, plus on 8.5 on San Francisco with Nick Mullins starting. Like, I never understood why that line was so wide versus a team that's much more talented than the Giants versus a team that's starting Nick Mullins. Now, I also kind of went back and forth on whether Nick Mullins was the best quarterback in that game or not, but I don't think you should I think you should favor Nick Mullins 7 points. It doesn't really make sense. Now, I wondered coming into this game, I wondered how many times Kyle Shanahan is going to have to pull performances out of these talentless rosters. And it obviously ran out today, potentially. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo could be back next week when they play up against the Miami Dolphins, which could be a game that gets them back in the swing of things and they win the game. And it looked like the 49ers again, but yeah. 49ers end up losing this game. The Eagles win and take control of the NFC East. On to the next game, though. A game that got flexed out. Cam got COVID. This was my game of the week, but then Cam got COVID. It got pushed back to Monday. And now, yeah, Patriots versus Chiefs. Get a little bit of Jarrett Stidham action in this Pats versus Chiefs game. That on paper looked like a really good matchup. Cam versus Mahomes, Andy Reid versus Belichick. I mean, it was still Andy versus Belichick, and it looked like Belichick had Reid's number for like the first half. First half looked real uncomfortable for the Chiefs offense and Patrick Mahomes. Running around, scrambling senselessly. He ran out of some clean pockets. Didn't look great. It looked real uncomfortable. And even still, they end up finishing the game with 26 points, which, I mean, in today's NFL isn't that high of a number, but yeah. I mean, Mahomes didn't have a great game. He made some really good throws. Overall, he wasn't that great. Brian Hoyer was pretty bad. Threw a bad pick. Took a really bad sack. Wiped 3 points away from the scoreboard where they could have went into halftime tied, but whatever. Took a bad sack, and it basically ended the game there. Stidham ended up playing, threw a pick on his first throw, which was then negated by a penalty. Then throws a touchdown. That throws a pick to Julian Edelman basically a pick to Julian Edelman. Throws to Julian Edelman, bounces off his hands, which then gets intercepted for a pick six. Now that I think about it, the Chiefs' offense wasn't even really that good. The Chiefs' offense only scored like one touchdown, which is rare for a Chiefs defense. But Belichick always has a great game plan. It seems like no one was open. He was sitting in the pocket forever, like 3, 4, 5 seconds type ever. He was like, those quick throws weren't there today. He looked like it was an uncomfortable looking game for the Chiefs. So, yeah. But then Stidham ended up throwing another interception. Stidham wasn't good. Hoyer wasn't good. This team greatly misses Cam, as we probably suspected, unless you were a Jared Stidham fanboy or something like that. I don't know. Even Jared Stidham's mom probably thinks Cam Newton is the best for the Patriots team. So, yeah. They came into this game as 7-point dogs against the Chiefs. That line moved all the way out to 11 with Stidham and Hoyer, and they ended up covering that. Wait, did they? What was the final score? 10 to 26? So, yeah, they ended up covering that. Well, on Wheel Hill Sportsbook, they got out to 11. I mean, you had to rework the lines. I mean, Cam Newton was a big reason why this game was lined. I don't know, because this 7 seemed really big for one of all a Bill Belichick-led team and one of all a Bill Belichick-led team with Cam Newton, who was playing well. So the Pats plus 7 would have been a pretty good bet. So yeah, the Chiefs plus 7. No, the Chiefs. The Pats plus 7 would have been a pretty good bet. But then Cam isn't playing anymore. And I don't know if he'll come back next week. So he might be out for the next 2 weeks. Which isn't good for New England. He might be out for this week and next week because I think you have to take a 10 or 14 day quarantine. And Cam probably won't be here next game either, which is going to be a big loss for the Patriots. As he was playing pretty well. I mean, week 1 was kind of like a solid, just distribute the ball. We're running it down their throat. Next week was Cam go off, and he did. The next week was, he didn't really play that well. So, yeah. I think if they had Cam, they win this game. Chiefs offense did not play well. But let's get on to the last game. The original Monday Night Football game. ESPN Falcons versus the Green Bay Packers. The Packers came into this game as 7.5-point favorites versus the Falcons. I'm gonna say the 49ers. They're not the same. At least, the Falcons didn't blow a double-digit lead today. That's the bright side of this game. They didn't blow a double-digit lead. Now, they were never really in the game per se. And for a while leading up to kickoff, I was like, I'm really feeling this Falcons plus 7. Glad I didn't bet on that because they got destroyed. Aaron Rodgers picked them apart. Aaron Rodgers played well, made some great throws, but half of his touchdowns, the receiver he was targeting was wide open. No one was even in a 5-10 10-yard radius of the intended target. The Falcons secondary gave up a ton. They were bad. They were bad. I mean, they've been bad. They lost AJ Terrell, who had a bad first game, good second game. So I don't know what to think about Terrell, only 2 games into his career. But he would damn sure help out what they have now. But yeah, Rodgers took some bad sacks. Also made some really good throws. Rodgers is playing really, really well. Almost like the vintage Aaron Rodgers again. Now, MVS let me down. Marquise Valdes-Scantling let me down. Because I played him in fantasy. I picked him up on one of my fantasy leagues off the waiver wire, right? I almost picked up Tanya. I almost picked up Bob Tanya. I didn't. Ended up getting MVS. I mean, they played 2 different positions, but whatever. I almost picked him up. I didn't. Get MVS. No Lazard. No Adams. Who else is going to get the targets? Turns out they're just going to throw to running back 7,000 times and to Tanya. So MVS lets me down. Long story short. I mean, Matt Ryan did not play well at all. His arm looked dead on some throws. Like, I don't know if his arm is gone as a whole, but there were some throws in this game where it looked bad. Like, real bad. And he made some rough decisions. He had like a double dropped interception, like a dropped interception that turned to another dropped interception. It ended up being caught for like a 15-yard gain. That was crazy. The Falcons did not play well on offense. I mean, Gurley ran the ball relatively well. Had some pretty good touchdowns. Powered through a guy. Ran around the edge at one time. I mean, he only had 3.6 per carry, but he had a bunch of touchdowns. Todd Gurley wasn't great overall, but he ran in some pretty nice looking touchdowns. I mean, everyone was open. That's the story of the game. And then they had the one where they just tried to tackle Tanya during the route, and then he ended up just wide open. This Falcons team is just a mess. That could have been Dan Quinn's last game. Speaking of coach's last game, Bill O'Brien was fired before Dan Quinn or Adam Gase, which seems weird because they're 0-3. Yeah, I mean, they lose to the Vikings, who look pretty bad, but coming into this game. But other than that, I mean, they lost to the Steelers, Ravens, and Chiefs, who were 3 of the better teams, like record-wise at least, in the NFL. So, yeah, that's interesting. Bill O'Brien's gone. I mean, I don't think he got enough credit as a coach. Like, he was such a bad GM. I think he kind of overshadowed some of the good stuff he did as a coach. I mean, he also did some bad stuff as a coach, but I don't think it was overall. Like, I think you could do worse than Bill O'Brien. Like, on the open market, I would say there's not too many better coaches, but Bieniemy, Dabble, they're probably both better. So, yeah. The Falcons are in a rough spot. I don't know what to do with Matt Ryan. I mean, they have the weapons. Like, they're still a talented team on offense. On defense, they're dreadful. But do they go for a defensive-minded coach? I think that would be a mistake, kind of. Like, I think Bieniemy is the obvious candidate, or Dabble is the obvious candidate if you're looking for a coach. Like, if you're if you're Houston, I'm looking for Bieniemy, Dabble. If you're Atlanta, I'm looking for Bieniemy, Dabble. I think they're that good. I think they're the 2 best coaching candidates available right now. I mean, Lincoln Riley, but I mean, from a play calling standpoint, he'll be great, but I think as an in-game decision maker, he's not great. Like, some of the 4th down stuff is not really what you want to see. He's pretty conservative when it comes to those when it comes to 4th down decisions. But yeah, this is the end of the podcast. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Cause I'm poor and I want to grow. So yeah, That's the end of the podcast, and I'm out. Peace.